Thank you, Outer Limits, guys. Thank you, Joe Stefano, for helping create Outer Limits. And thank you, Outer Limits team, for letting me work with you guys. Tom Tanisco, Brad Wright, thank you, guys. You guys are awesome. Vancouver was cool. Burnaby was cool. And we get the opportunity now to do something very special to open up Fiction Friday, everybody. So let me do this. Excuse me. So, since I, LG Grande, am thinking about trying to translate my work from television at Star Trek, Voyager, and The Outer Limits into a YouTube channel to talk about finer aspects of script writing, do reviews of films, and also talk about prose fiction, because, of course, I've started a career doing that, or a small part of my career doing that, and I really enjoy doing that as well as talking about great old writers. And I've gotten to edit a couple books for Borderlands Books. I am going to be hopefully starting up a YouTube channel called Former Star Trek Writing Fellow, talking about, again, those finer aspects of script writing, good and bad television that's out there now, movie suggestions, themes within these things, and powerful writing that really carries itself. And so whether it's on screen or on the page, hopefully I'll do a good job talking about that stuff, in addition to talking about my own writing and things like that, controversies occasionally, that sort of thing, from, of course, a pro-freedom point of view, from the anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, agorist point of view. So we might be talking about Dostoevsky. We might be talking the Brothers Karamazov. We might be discussing the Grand Inquisitor. We might be looking at the Bible. We might be looking at a Doctor Who story from the Philip Hinchcliffe era, or a classic Star Trek story from original Trek, or maybe one of the Voyager episodes that one of my friends wrote, or an Outer Limits script, or something like that. Rod Serling. Some of those things, talking about old horror writing. Rod Serling's Twilight Zone magazine, edited by T.E.D. Klein, one of the best magazines of all time. Weird Tales, or Robert E. Howard stories, because I got to edit that Robert E. Howard collection for Borderlands. Lots of great stuff is out there. And it's wonderful to be able to dip in and touch base. And this month, actually, for what they call Booktube on YouTube, and if people happen to see this either on Rumble or on YouTube, if I post this as my first video under that channel on Rumble or YouTube, this segment of it anyway, they're familiar with the term Booktube. And there are a lot of great people out there. I've mentioned Michael Vaughn before. I love Michael Vaughn. He's just great. There's so many really good ones. Media Death Cult is great. I mentioned John Arraz is great. You know, so many. John Delarose. They're awesome. And we've had Tom Monteleone on to talk about his company. And we often mention a writer who has really run the gamut from science fiction to medical thrillers to adventure, short stories, novels, and has had things turned into movies. And he's a friend of mine and a medical doctor, and he actually did the line edits for my first novella, Bite, which was released over in England, in Brighton, England. I got to fly out there for the big release and so on and so forth. So this man I want to introduce for Horror Mayhem, for the Booktube channel people, and for those of you who are watching now live as I stream this on my Liberty Conspiracy channel. His name is F. Paul Wilson. Francis Paul Wilson. From P. Gardner Goldsmith to F. Paul Wilson, I want to give you a recommendation for Horror Mayhem. One of my favorite speculative fiction writers of all time is F. Paul Wilson. One of my favorite short story writers, novella writers. One of my favorite guys, F. Paul Wilson. Medical doctor. Only practiced a couple days a week for much of his life because he was successful in his prose fiction. Has had stuff turned into movies, things like The Keep, which he didn't exactly think was the best. Then things like Menage a Trois, which was part of the Hunger TV series when Terrence Stamp was the host, the first season of it on cable, with Daniel Craig. He was in it. Lena Headey was in it, and Karen Black was in it. Oh man, it is great. If you get a chance to see it, it's wonderful. They're very early on in their careers, except for Karen Black. She had been, a mainstay for horror fans for so long. But I want to recommend to you one of my favorite series from F. Paul Wilson. And in fact, if you want to find F. Paul Wilson's website, you have to use this name to get there. It's not the F. Paul Wilson fan site or anything like that. The character is Repairman Jack. And what's really amazing about Repairman Jack is he's in, I don't know how many books now. It's got to be 15 at least as a main character. But he started actually as a side character in a whole different series that actually got introduced with The Keep. And so Jack was sort of in the background in some of these things. And Jack, Repairman Jack, is a guy who is very mysterious, works out in New York, and he doesn't fix appliances for people. He doesn't fix things in the home for people. He fixes situations. You never know his last name. You never find that out. He doesn't have his own honest, straight-up government-applied, mandated Social Security number. Only gets paid in cash or precious metals. Hides the precious metals along pipes behind his walls. Tapes the coins so that if metal detectors come along, they only detect the pipes. And what's great in the Repairman Jack series, which I'll show you right now, starts technically with the tomb, okay, is that the character is actually much like Paul. You can tell that he's a libertarian, very pro-freedom, understands the importance of self-defense with a you-know-what, and like I said, he skirts the government control grid system, doesn't accept anything that's going to mark him with a blip for the government to find, and he accepts clients who need help fixing something. He's a fixer. But what's really interesting about this is that you never know in each book whether the book is going to be a straight-up adventure story without any supernatural anything in it, or if it is going to be supernatural. And Jack, and you never know his last name, Jack is going to end up running into some really weird thing. So you don't know. You pick up the book. It could be somebody wants to get a necklace back that was stolen from them, and then maybe that necklace actually wasn't originally theirs in the first place, and there's another party that it's very complicated. Maybe it's some weird scientific development that's come around, so it's speculative science because Paul's an MD. Or maybe it's some monster from another dimension or something. Who knows what's going on? And the even cooler thing about F. Paul Wilson's Repairman Jack books is that eventually, as you go through the books, you find out that the stuff that you thought that wasn't really supernatural, it's actually connected to this larger framework of massive, really cool, multi-century supernatural craziness. If you read John Connolly's stuff, he's from, was he from Ireland? He has a series of stories that originally, when you're reading them, you think they're just crime dramas, like trying to find a bad guy. And then you find out as the stories go along, there's actually some supernatural stuff mixed in there. Some people have done this very effectively. And, so it's really cool. In a way, it's sort of in the tradition of some of those supernatural detectives, that sort of thing. But also, he's his own guy. He's hip. He knows music. He's very cool. He knows how to fight. He knows guns. And the stories are just fantastic. And if you want to get to the F. Paul Wilson website, you have to go to REPAIRMANJACK.com. Now, Paul was the recipient of the very first Prometheus Award, which is the award for outstanding science fiction for writing, long form. He won it, and I called it up on the screen here. I think it was Wheels. Was it Wheels? Yeah, it was Wheels Within Wheels, 1979. So Paul Wilson, F. Paul Wilson, was the first recipient of the Prometheus Award for science fiction. And following him was Poul Anderson. And if you watch Doctor Who, if you remember the episode, The Robots of Death, the character named Poul it's a little tip of the hat to Poul Anderson. And let me see. And then that was in 1979. Paul received the first award for Wheels Within Wheels. And I guess Poul Anderson received it for a short story or a novella the same year. And then in 1982, L. Neil Smith received it for The Probability Brooch. And in that, he has his main character is named Von Mises. And he goes to another dimension. I've mentioned this before. He goes to another dimension where apes can talk. That's one of the reasons I bought it, because I love Planet of the Apes. And the hero back in history is the guy who shot George Washington in the Whiskey Rebellion. It's awesome. And what's even cooler, if you read The Tomb or the other books in the Repairman Jack series, in his apartment building, there's a guy who lives a few floors up from him called Neil the Anarchist. And it's L. Neil Smith. Oh, man, it's great. Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome and awesome stuff. So you can check out, if anybody wants to check out, Wikipedia does a pretty good job on it. I've got it on my other screen here in Russia, doing my Russian propaganda. But you can check it out. It's a lot of great stuff there. And I'll just mention one other thing is that there's a place where he goes to get his weapons called the Isher Sports Shop. And the Isher is a reference to another writer. And I'll tell you about that some other time when I give some movie suggestions and things like that. But I do hope you get a chance. If you pick these up, you'll fly through them. They're fantastic. The Tomb is the first one. It is awesome. He's got a wonderful girlfriend he loves so much. He's so dedicated to her. And you're going to love Repairman Jack, F. Paul Wilson's novels. I think you're really, really going to dig them. And so if I do make this my first video for Booktube, I've got a lot more to discuss for Horror Mayhem. And in fact, I want to give some great suggestions on TV films to watch and things that you might appreciate. And maybe we'll do some watch-alongs as well. That could be kind of fun. We'll do that over at the Rumble channel or something. So thanks on that segment. We'll leave it at that. Maybe I'll edit now and shift over. And now it's time for reading fiction. And I might even do some reading fiction on the channel as well. But here we go, everybody.